To get this out the way now, this is not literally the worst lineup in Formula 1 history because F1 is littered with people who are basically able to buy their way into driving for desperate F1 teams. These drivers were sometimes barely even professional racing drivers and were often on race-by-race deals until their money ran out. After the 90s, F1 became a lot more professionalized. Teams created bespoke driver academies, there was testing programs for young drivers, and the super license system was introduced, meaning now you had to be a competitive race-winning driver in the lower formula over the past 3 years to even race in Formula 1. All of that is why I think that even though there has been worse combinations of drivers in the past, with all of the advantages in professionalism, preparation, and the fact that these two are given an entire season together, pound for pound, Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher at Haas in 2021 is by far the worst and most toxic driver lineup that should never have been allowed to happen. This driver lineup was put together not because the team wanted these drivers together, but more so down to unfortunate circumstances and desperation. The 2020 pandemic had a catastrophic financial effect on every team on the grid, as evidenced by the fact that without a cost cap, Williams was sold as a result. Without a cash injection, Haas very easily could have gone the same way. At the time, everyone expected that either Grosjean or K-Mag was going to be dropped, but what we didn't expect is for both of them to be dropped in favor of an all-rookie lineup in 2021. In the words of Romain Grosjean, he said, "I knew probably one of us would be out at the end of the year, just because the situation around the world and COVID has made it very hard financially. I said to Gunther on the call when he called me that I was expecting one of us to leave, and he said, no, for financial reasons, I need both of you out." And now, when it comes to finances, the one thing that Haas definitely didn't have that could have saved them is Odoo, who are the sponsor of today's video. Odoo is the all-in-one business management platform that allows you to run every single aspect of your business with over 40 different apps, including giving you the ability to manage all of your invoices online. If you're struggling to keep track of all of your invoices, then with Odoo, you can create and manage them in seconds. All you have to do is enter the client information, the services you've provided, the payment terms that you have, and in no time your invoice is ready to go. From there you can send it via email directly from the app, and once you're connected to your bank, Odoo will redirect the customers for seamless payment, with all of your invoices being organized and managed online so that you can see clearly when you have been paid. The best part about Odoo is that to get started, it's absolutely free. With their one app plan, you can start managing your invoices at no cost right now. Start using Odoo today completely free using the link below and see how it can help you accelerate your business. The first thing that the team decided was to sign Ferrari Jr. and reigning Formula 2 champion Mick Schumacher. This in itself I have never had a problem with, because if you win the Formula 2 championship, then I think that you at least deserve a chance in Formula 1, and given that he did have the Schumacher name, Mick was also able to bring in some investment as well. Having an all-rookie lineup is not entirely unheard of, as long as both of the drivers have potential to be something special. However, when it comes to Haas, it was blatantly obvious that the choice for the second seat wasn't motivated by talent, pedigree, or potential. It was motivated entirely by financial desperation. Nikita Mazepin is the son of Dmitry Mazepin, a Russian billionaire oligarch with very close ties to Vladimir Putin, and at the time the owner of chemical company Uralkali, who would go on to be Haas's title sponsor in 2021 at a tune of approximately $20 million a year. Nikita Mazepin is one of the most hated figures in Formula 1 history, and for good reason. Even before he got into Formula 1, he was involved in numerous controversial incidents in the lower formula, with questionable driving, mental immaturity, as well as an incident in which he punched Callum Ilott in the face, which led to a race ban. The point is that his reputation was already terrible even before Haas announced that he would drive for them, which made it all the more remarkable that in December of 2020, he posted a video on Instagram of him groping a woman in the back of a car. Initially, the girl actually defended him, saying that they were friends, before then posting on her Instagram saying to never let someone touch or disrespect you, as well as to protect drunk girls. As for Mazepin and the team, has posted a statement condemning the abhorrent behavior, and Mazepin himself posted an apology, but even that reeked of entitlement when he said, "I have to hold myself to a higher standard as a Formula 1 driver," making it sound as though it would be justified had he not been in Formula 1. To say that Haas looked like absolute clowns for signing him would be an understatement. But to be honest, I didn't really feel any sympathy for them, given that it was their choice to do so. Although I don't think that anyone could have predicted that he would then go on to film himself groping a woman. The team were basically slaves to his money, which was essential for their survival. They chose to hire him and now had to shoulder all of the embarrassment, criticism, and repercussions that came along with him. It's important to remember that although both of these two drivers were rookies, they had already done their fair share of testing in F1 machinery. Mazepin initially signed with Force India as their development driver back in 2016 and drove the 2016, 2017 and 2018 cars. In 2019, he even threw some money at Mercedes, which Toto was more than willing to accept, and also tested the championship-winning Mercedes W10 in both a private and mid-season test at Barcelona. As for Mick Schumacher being a Ferrari Junior, he also had plenty of track time with outings for Alfa Romeo as well as Ferrari in 2019. Having said that, before the season even began, we already knew that this was going to be a bad year for Haas, in which they would almost certainly finish last. Due to their financial problems and the fact that the ground effect regulations got delayed by an entire year, they essentially decided to sacrifice the season. They carried their car over from 2020 and chose not to develop it at all in 2021, whilst throwing all of their money and resources into nailing the new regulations in 2022. This was a pragmatic decision because it would allow them to develop their two rookies with very little pressure, as no one expected Haas to be even remotely competitive with a one-year-old car that was already at the back of the grid in 2020. If Schumacher and Mazepin had just focused on developing themselves as drivers, creating a good team environment whilst also collaborating as teammates, and also not crashing too much and costing the team millions, they could have had a low-key season with the main focus and opportunity being in 2022, when with a year of experience under their belts, they would finally have a point-scoring car. Unfortunately, literally none of what I just said actually happened. The biggest problem within the team was the toxic environment that was created by both of its drivers and how that started to manifest into on-track incidents. What's important to remember is that Schumacher and Mazepin were not your average rookies. The level of influence and power that they had inside of the team far outweighed the caliber of drivers that they were, and it created an imbalance of power inside the team. The environment they produced was really bizarre because you had two rookies with no respect for the team, no respect for the authority of Gunther Steiner, and to make it worse, they constantly put their own selfish ambitions of wanting to beat their teammates at all cost ahead of the team itself. And now all rookies in one way or another feel the pressure of wanting to prove themselves and to establish themselves onto the grid. That in itself is not a bad thing, but when that starts to fuel toxicity and impact the team negatively is when it becomes a problem. Considering that they were only teammates for one season and the fact that they were racing at the back of the grid for basically nothing, the number of on-track incidents that they had was ridiculous. In Baku, Mazepin almost put Schumacher into the wall on the final lap. In Silverstone, the two collided, sending Mazepin into a spin. In Zandvoort, after qualifying controversy in which both of them ruined each other's laps, yet again the two touched, with Mick sustaining damage. And then finally in Monza, yet again the two collided, with Mick being sent into a spin. And now, if these two were fighting for a title, then you could almost understand that level of aggression between teammates. But to take those risks, to mess about in qualifying trying to sabotage the other driver, and to race the way that they did, clearly showed that there was an external level of animosity that motivated them. Both of them felt a lot of pressure for differing reasons that ultimately turned into desperation. Mazepin because he was the black sheep at the team who was clearly only there because of his money, and Mick because of his surname and the fact that as a Ferrari Junior, if he were to be outperformed by a pay driver like Mazepin, it would basically be career suicide. There is no doubt that Mick was clearly the better driver, and he succeeded in outperforming Mazepin across the season. Although neither driver scored any points, Mick ended up dominating his teammates, which internally only piled on even more pressure on Mazepin. In qualifying, Mick was on average over 4.5 tenths faster than Mazepin, and whilst he managed to make it out of Q1 twice with a best qualifying of 14th, Mazepin never once got out of Q1, and the only times in which he outqualified Mick was in the 2 races in which Mick didn't even participate in qualifying. As far as the races, it was a very similar story. In races where they both reached the checkered flag, Mazepin only beat Mick on track in 3 out of the 22 Grand Prix. The fact that Mazepin was getting dominated by Mick from the beginning of the season instantly started to drive a wedge between him and the rest of the team. What compounded the issue was the fact that he was also struggling with the uncompetitive and unstable VF21 by constantly spinning throughout the season, which not only brought on ridicule from both the fans and drivers, but also earned him the nickname Mazepin. The paranoia inside the team was almost instant. Early in the season, there was a big chassis controversy as Mazepin felt that he was being hamstrung by a heavier chassis compared to Mick. However, Günther Steiner rebuked this claim by saying that the chassis were being swapped between drivers from race to race. During an episode of Drive to Survive, we got incredible insights into just how quickly the environment deteriorated and became toxic at Haas. In only the 4th race of the season, whilst in conversation with his dad, Nikita said, "There is not a lot of friends here," to which his dad replied that it's every man for himself. Things escalated even further when Dmitry then threatened to pull his sponsorship money out of the team if Nikita wasn't given a brand new chassis. But it's worth noting that even once Mazepin was given a brand new chassis for the second half of the season, it's not as if there was a major improvement in his results. And now, something that I want to make very clear is that whilst it's easy to lay all of the blame entirely on Mazepin, Mick Schumacher also contributed to the toxicity within the team. Even though he outperformed Mazepin, he became extremely crash prone. Now, all rookies are going to make mistakes, but for a team that was already struggling financially, Mick's crashes were simply unacceptable. He had heavy shunts in Jeddah, Imola and France, as well as big crashes during FP3 in Monaco and Hungary, which also prevented him from taking part in qualifying. Now, it's easy to say that this was just a rookie pushing too hard in a very tricky car, but given that these crashes then continued into his second season in 2022, the reality was that Mick Schumacher was just a very crash-prone driver. Although Mazepin was slow and was ridiculed for spinning, that in itself is nowhere near as damaging to the team as constantly crashing your car into the barriers. It will come as no surprise that the 2 rookies at Haas accumulated the highest combined crash damage on the grid, but whilst Mazepin ranked 8th out of 20 drivers with a total of just under $3 million, Mick Schumacher was the highest ranked driver, costing his team just under $5 million in crash damage. This created a very big problem politically and caused yet another fracture within the team. As Mick's crashes became more and more costly, he started to draw criticism from within the team and also Günther Steiner. Where this got tricky is that the Schumacher camp, which also included his uncle Ralph, who is an ex-F1 driver and German broadcaster, started to fire back at the team and Günther Steiner on Mick's behalf. Ralf Schumacher was clearly biased towards his nephew and used his platform to not only criticize Steiner and the team, but also to criticize Nikita Mazepin, which only made things worse. Whilst Mick was not the one to say these things publicly, in my eyes he still holds some level of responsibility for not only the crashes, but also for not being proactive in stopping his uncle Ralph from criticizing and dividing the team even more. Whilst Günther was definitely given a difficult situation to manage with so much politics and toxicity inside the team, both on the Schumacher as well as the Mazepin side, he also didn't cover himself in glory. In my opinion, he has never been a good driver manager, even going back to when he had 2 experienced drivers in Grosjean and K-Mag. To then expect him to be able to control 2 rookies who were each more interested in beating each other than working for the team, I just don't really see a world in which he was ever going to be able to control them. In a way, although he had the position of team principal, Given the power that Mazepin and Schumacher had, and also the influence in the media, he never really had the respect or authority to be able to control them or the people around them. Although both Schumacher and Mazepin were signed on to be teammates again in 2022 in the brand new ground effect car that the team put all of their chips into, after Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine and given Dmitry Mazepin's political connections to Vladimir Putin, has decided to terminate the Uralkali sponsorship and thus the contract of Nikita Mazepin before the season even began. In his place, the team brought back Kevin Magnussen alongside Mick, and in a great twist of irony, K-Mag would go on to finish 5th on his comeback in Bahrain. He would also go on to beat Mick in his second season, who was subsequently dropped for 2023 after yet another crash-filled season. Even though everyone expected for Haas to be a disaster going into 2021, somehow the season was even worse than what we anticipated. Although Mick showed potential, he would go on to cost the team millions in crash damage. Mazepin was not only dominated by his rookie teammate, but also established himself as one of the worst drivers in the modern era, and behind the scenes, the team was ravaged by politics and toxicity that was fueled by both of the drivers and their individual camps. The team's survival is the #1 priority, and so that is why I will always understand their justification for signing Mazepin in the first place, because it was a necessary evil for their survival, even if it doesn't justify the horrific season that they then went on to have. Luckily, since the cost cap was introduced in 2021, Haas have managed to stabilize financially and hopefully will never again have to resort to a driver like Mazepin and his money again. Well, there you have it. Once again, a big thank you to Odoo for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check out their invoicing app using the link in the description. And if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would be massively appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one.